the
Hi everyone, thank you for joining our webinar today on the two cybersecurity grants. We're just going to give it another minute for people to join before we kick off. Okay, we've great numbers. Welcome everyone to our second webinar on the two cybersecurity grants for Irish SMEs that have been launched by Enterprise Ireland and the National Cybersecurity Centre. We're delighted to see the launch of these two grants because there's significant support here for Irish SMEs to assess their cybersecurity firstly and then implement the remediations from it. It's an exciting time for us in the cybersecurity industry because these grants being launched by the government demonstrate the importance of cybersecurity. And also I'd compare it to, I was looking at getting solar panels for my house recently, and when there's an incentive there, to get work done, a grant definitely helps. So it opens up a conversation and opportunity for cybersecurity providers as well to engage with their clients. Just to do a quick review, what's been done to date. The first grant has been launched by Enterprise Ireland, the Cyber Review Grant, in September. So this is a stage one. It aims to assess a company's cybersecurity and produce a remediation plan with a project up to €3,000, 80% funding. The second stage of that is the Cyber Improvement Grant, which was launched by the National Cybersecurity Centre just at the start of this month in November, and that's to implement the recommendations from stage one of the Cyber Review Grant. It allows for larger projects, minimum cost 25k, right up to and above 60k. And Alison will go through the details of that over the webinar. We've been very pleased, I suppose, to have the opportunity to work with Paul and Alison and the team in Enterprise Ireland and the NCSC to be able to provide input into the development of the grants before they were launched, and also the delivery of the grants afterwards, to ensure from the cybersecurity provider's point of view that they're fit for purpose. So a couple of weeks back at the start of September, Enterprise Ireland and NCSC came in and presented to Cyber Ireland members on our first webinar to promote the grants before they were launched, provide exclusive information, answer our members' questions. What we did after that was we set up a web page on the Cyber Ireland website, collated a list of our member companies that are providers of services for the cyber review and the improvement grants, which are now listed on our website. We have over 50 members and cybersecurity providers there. And that web page has been shared out through both the NCSC and Enterprise Ireland, and in particular through EI's communication platforms, newsletter, to their 4,000 client companies. So it's a really significant promotion for Cyber Ireland members. A couple of people have asked us around the ordering of that list. It's on a first come, first served basis. So companies that are listed at the top were the first ones to register on that list, and so on and so forth. So to today's webinar, we've asked the NCSC and Enterprise Ireland to come back in and provide us an update. Paul Browne, who's leading out for Enterprise Ireland, is going to give us an update on the EI Cyber Review Grant. how it's going, the number of applications, feedback, the promotional activities. And then we're going to have Alison Casserly from the NCSC, who's going to present further details of the Cyber Improvement Grant now that that has been launched. We've gathered questions from you in the registration and beforehand, and both Paul and Alison are going to answer those questions both through their presentations, and we'll also have a Q&A session afterwards. So if you do have any questions, maybe hold off until after the presentations, and please use the Q&A function so we can gather those there. I want to especially thank Paul and Alison for engaging with us and our members in the delivery of the grants. We've had a lot of questions coming in, and that's what we've organised today's webinar around. I suppose we also want to note that this grant is a pilot programme. The initial targets are Enterprise Ireland clients. It's a fantastic starting point to support Irish companies, the ones who are exporting globally, because it's ensuring their cybersecurity and also contributing to the Ireland Inc. brand of being a cybersecurity leader. Now, separate to this, we'd love to see the grant extended further. We know there's over 300,000 SMEs in Ireland. The vast majority of those are micro enterprises with less than 10 employees who are the most vulnerable to a cybersecurity incident. But that's a separate piece of work and something that we're working on in Cyber Ireland, as part of our advocacy and policy position. Quite recently in October, our chairperson, Browne Honan, presented a joint Oireachtas committee on policy recommendations to develop the cybersecurity industry, and one of those was around greater supports to improve cybersecurity for all SMEs. I also want to thank Paul and Alison as well, because we've really seen their recognition of the importance of the cybersecurity sector and the cybersecurity providers in the success of the grant by being very open with us, in working with us, taking on the feedback, realizing that, I suppose, this is an iterative process, and coming in here today to present and answer our questions. So just a bit of housekeeping. This will be recorded. We're going to send out the presentation part of the recording afterwards, as well as the slide decks, with permission from Paul and Alison, to the people who haven't registered or weren't able to make it today, or if you have to drop off early. Again, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function so we're able to see those as they come through. So first up, I'm going to pass it over to Paul from Enterprise Ireland to give an update on the Cyber Review grant.
That's great, Owen. Thank you very much for that introduction. And I just want to start on, as Zara sets up the slides, with a thank you, or two thank yous, which is thank you to the cyber community for the warmth of the welcome that they've given me, the understanding. As somebody who's delivered technical products but not cyber products before, it's been a learning curve for me. So thank you very much for help on that. But an even bigger thank you for the engagement with the grant. And when I share the figures later on in these 4 slides, you'll see what I mean by that. It's been a very strong response, primarily driven by Cyber Ireland members knocking on the doors with end clients to drive this. Zara, I'm going to go on to the next slide there, please. And what I'm going to do, first of 4 slides, is just a quick reminder of what the cyber grant is. Now, Owen has touched on many of these points. It's very much a get people off the fence, get started with cybersecurity. Cybersecurity being something that they've known that they've always needed to do, but we're trying to move it from someday to now. And the way that it's been designed is very much as the kind of the initial onboarding report that you might do business as usual with a client as well. So it should fit with your business. What we're seeing is it is 4 minutes to apply. We have the numbers with the clients to back that up. A little bit slower than I'd like in terms of the approval. It is the fastest grant in EI for approval times, but we're always looking at that to improve it as well. So these obviously the follow-on NCSC grant. So the EI grant remains the stepping stone towards the more significant NCSC grant that Alison is going to talk in more detail in a couple of minutes' time. Going to bounce on to the next slide, which is talking about the progress so far. And I feel like we need to have a drum roll when I share these numbers with you. So as of this morning, 212 Enterprise Ireland clients have started the process of applying for this grant. And I'm being very careful in that phrasing, in that they've started the process. We need to keep on moving them through the pipeline. But it is by far the highest response rate that we have seen to a grant this year. It's certainly one of the highest response rates full stop. And I'll tell you a little bit about the promotion we've been doing, but I think it's really in reaction to the Cyber Ireland members getting out, putting this in front of clients, using it to convert those end clients from someday to now. I do need to mention as well that there's a lot of work we're doing to move the clients along the pipeline, but also those 212 represent about 5% of the potential EI client base. So really strong reaction, but still a very, very strong market potential in there if you're looking at your biz dev activities there as well. So we've had good feedback from clients on it. We've had good feedback from the help desk mechanism that we have dedicated to this. The consultant quality mechanism is one that we're getting asked quite a bit about. In general, that's very positive from Cyber Ireland members who are certified. And that is different for us in Enterprise Ireland in that this is not a business as usual grant. This is not just about the money. It's about the expertise that Cyber Ireland members bring to that, but also the fact that Cyber Ireland members will naturally take the company on their cybersecurity journey even after the grant engagement as well. So very happy with that progress, but very interested in feedback as well from Cyber Ireland members. And thank you for the questions that you shared via Owen and Sarah before that. Going to move on to the third slide out of the four, which is some of the frequently asked questions. Now, these are the questions that we're getting into the cybersecurity review at enterprise-ireland email. Some of them we'll come back around to when we do the Q&A session at the end. One of the biggest ones we get asked is around the certifications or equivalents for consultants. In general, that is very straightforward. A client names you as a consultant. If we haven't seen you before, we reach out to you. We say, hey, can you give us details of the certifications we hold or you hold? At the stage where we're taking it on trust, we do reserve the right to audit in more detail later, and that is going quite straightforward. We do have, because obviously there's a lot of certifications there, an equivalence process that we're operating within Enterprise Ireland, and again, we're learning as we go through that. Closing dates wanted to touch on in that the Enterprise Ireland grant remains open until at least Q1, Q2 next year. We expect it will go further depending on the funding that we get for that. So Enterprise Ireland is very much open for business. I know the NCSC need to manage grant dates very carefully as well. So Alison will give you an update on that. And next question that we often get asked is the identifying Enterprise Ireland clients. I think there was one person who was getting very upset that I wouldn't just download the entire EI client list and share it with them. Yeah, not going to happen. We need to keep trust with our clients, but there are other ways of doing your business development to identify Enterprise Ireland clients to reach out to there, which we've been talking one-to-one with a lot of the consultants as well. And I'll include that in the list of offers when we talk about promotions on the next slide. Final questions then, some really good questions on business development, how companies can leverage this grant as part of their own business development activities, but also as part of that, then getting in to understand how the end client applies. And I know we've got a question that we'll loop back into on the frequently asked questions on that, so I'll cover that in more detail. Just to go on to my final slide, which is really around the promotion that we're doing in Enterprise Ireland. Now, you might notice where I'm sitting at the moment is not the usual background. I am currently just stepping away from a regional event that Shannon Chamber of Commerce are running with their lean company. So this is one of 5 events that we're attending this week, very much outside of the usual cyber, because we're trying to take it to the masses. We're trying to take it to companies that maybe aren't even aware that they need to be engaging with cyber. So that's one of the things we're doing on both a regional and a sectoral basis. And Owen and Zara and myself had some good conversations about extending that further. You've probably seen some of the PR that Enterprise Ireland have been doing. Very, very effective in terms of the messaging. We have an item in our client newsletter every single week. You may have noticed that we featured one Cyber Ireland member in the newsletter before last. We are making that as an open offer to all Cyber Ireland members if we can find a newsworthy item for that. So it can't just be something on your website. In this case, Sunday Business Post was running an article on the Cyber Ireland member as well. So again, open discussion to working with you on that one. Our account managers in Enterprise Ireland have been very active in putting this out to their end clients. Our account managers or DAs, some of which you have as an EI client if you're one of our clients as well, you'll understand just the depth of the relationship that they have with companies, really trusted advisors. And if they're putting someone on the table like a cyber grant, 9 times out of 10, the company's going to pick up and run with that. So we've been doing that. And this week, we're kicking off the next wave of promotion, which is around the one-to-one direct communication. So we are targeting food companies in this wave. We are leveraging the information that we know about them to score food companies in general, their weaknesses, their strengths, just to really tailor that message. And that will be landing over the next couple of days. And food companies in Enterprise Ireland are some of the biggest clients that we have. And they'll be on the scale of the multinationals. There's some really significant companies in there as well. Finally, we talked about regional events. We talked about sector webinars. They'll be ongoing, and we're liaising with Cyber Ireland to bring in Cyber Ireland members, but also to do that fairly. The final thing I want to say is really around supporting your own biz dev efforts. Now, I'm mentioning two because I've heard some really, really good ideas that I can't share about because people are being very proactive in this space. But the things I do want to make an open offer to, on top of that offer in the newsletter with case studies, is around consultant-led webinars. So if you're setting up a webinar, bringing in clients to it, either on a sectoral basis or whatever basis you want to do, we are happy in Enterprise Ireland, open offer, to pop up for 2 or 3 minutes to appear on that, to talk strictly about the cyber grant, but there's kind of a social proof, social validation in us doing that as well. So that's some of the open offers that we want to make to support you in your biz dev efforts, because really we're all working to get towards the common goal of getting the Enterprise Ireland clients more cyber ready. On the final slide, which has the word questions, we're probably going to defer it to the very end because I do want to wrap up and hand it over to Alison. And I feel like Alison's the main event. Our grant's the warm-up act. I think most people here are here to hear a little bit more about the NCSE grant. I'm very, very glad that they're doing it because it is pulling a lot of interest through the smaller Enterprise Ireland grant as a first step to what Alison is going to share. So Alison, Owen, I'll hand back to you.
That's great, Paul. Thanks very much, Sarah. If you could bring up Alison's presentation. Fantastic, Paul, to see that, the number of applications that have come in a relatively short period of time, less than 2 months, 200, over 200 applications, one of the highest response rates of any of the EI grants, and already getting 5% conversion of the number of total EI clients. So like that's really, really positive to see. And I think it's great. It's testament as well to show the value of the connection with Cyber Ireland, for Cyber Ireland members to be able to promote it out, but also the value to us of working with EI and the supports there that you're offering to the Cyber Ireland members around promotion in the EI newsletter and support for Cyber Ireland members' own business development events and webinars as well. So thank you very much for that. Alison, we'll hand it over to you now to present on the Cyber Improvement Grant.
Great, thanks, Owen. Paul, I feel like you've built me up there now, so I just hope I can, I suppose, keep everyone happy. But just to give you a bit of background into the NCCIE and I suppose on where the funding has stemmed from, and forgive me now if this is familiar to you already, but in 2023, the NCCIE was established through Digital Europe programme funding. We were in receipt of 4.2 million. 50% is from Digital Europe programme, and just under 50% from Digital Europe, and just over 50% from our own central government funding. This is part of an agreement with the ECCC, and it's rolled out across all the member states. So there's a wider European network of NCCs, which we are obviously a member of. The funding is there and it's split over 5 different programs. One is obviously to make the project function. The other is to manage the project and to coordinate the activities. We're developing an IT collaboration portal. We're also looking at developing the community and the ecosystem, I suppose, and that builds on the work that we're doing with Owen and Enterprise Ireland in making those connections and collaborations to try help support and develop the ecosystem here. Why we're here today is the 5th strand of the project, which is the financial support program. And this is, again, targeting SMEs and companies that are owned and controlled within the EU. and is to provide that support to improve their cybersecurity resilience. The project, as I mentioned, started in October 2023, and it is run over a 2-year, a 24-month duration, which is important to keep in mind. We can move on there to the details of the grant, Sarah, please. So the improvement grant, as mentioned, we do have a 2 million budget, and it needs to be distributed. Oh, this is the joy of working from home. I have an alarm gone off. I'm so sorry. Give me 1 second. Owen, just to you for 1 sec. Sorry.
What I might do, Owen, is while Alison gets her security and fire alarm sorted, if there are any of the EI questions that came in from members, I might address them while. Oh, Alison, you're back okay again?
I'm very quick. Sorry.
Are you sure there's no fire in the house now, or
There's no fire in the house? It's
That's the
typical
commitment.
joys of
Commitment.
hybrid working. Hey.
because
Right,
if you do need a bit of time, we can cover a couple of questions with Paul.
I'm okay.
You're fine. Okay.
Yeah.
That was
We're all
quick.
good. So as I said, we have a 2 million budget, and it needs to be distributed and drawn down before the 1st of October 2025, which, as I mentioned, it leads into the deadline and the reason behind our impending deadlines. The focus again is raising the maturity levels, the cybersecurity maturity levels. And as mentioned at the very beginning, there are grants of up to 60,000 per project at a funding rate of 80%. Just keep in mind that the minimum project cost must be 25,000. So we really want to try to make an impact where we possibly can. The main focus is to have gone through phase 1 of your cyber review and to help and assist companies in implementing the recommendations from the cyber review. So some of the things that can be covered is the development of policies, looking at patches, firewalls, MFA, data protection, threat monitoring. I suppose one thing just to keep in mind that won't be funded is hardware. So that's just one thing to keep in mind going forward. So whatever measures you're looking to implement, that I suppose what we've listed here is a rough guide as to what would be approved and authorised. Some key dates, if we move on there, Zara, please. The grant scheme opened October, and the deadline for completed applications is the 8th of December 2024. So this is to try to keep us in line for the end of our project programme, which is October 2025, to allow for a drawdown of funding and the implementation of the changes or the improvements. Depending on the level of successful applications that we get, we may be in a position to make sure that we have a full distribution of the 2 million across Ireland. So if, for example, we only got projects to the value of 1 million in this round, we would have the ability to reopen for a second round in January 2025. It is all dependent on the number of applications. What will not change is the closing date. So everything must be implemented and claimed by the 30th of June 2025 for us to be able to close out our project in October 2025. So 2 things that will not change. The amount of money we have available is 2 million, and the closing date for all implementations is the 30th of June 2025. Those are guaranteed, so keep them in the forefront of your minds. By the 30th of June 2025, everything must be implemented and completed. All relevant licenses need to be in place, and any reimbursement requests, so any drawdown of the funding that you need to do, needs to be submitted to us here in the NCSE. We can move on there, just in terms to look at the eligibility criteria. So this is first and foremost, to get through the first gate, you need to be a client company of Enterprise Ireland. I suppose that's where the work between ourselves and Enterprise Ireland is like hand in glove right now. So if you can get yourself through that first element, it brings you neatly into the second phase. In terms of the eligible actions and the costs, so only the costs that are agreed as part of your grant agreement and costs that can be incurred during the project period are eligible. So we can't retrospectively claim for any amendments or changes or improvements you've made, let's say in the last 12 months. It is only for in respect of the period of this project. Again, I've listed some of the details of the types of actions that can be undertaken as part of the grant programme. I think they're all fairly straightforward enough. One thing to keep in mind is that this is public funding. Public procurement rules must be followed. There's a huge amount of information on the OGP website. But I suppose a couple of key things: 3 written quotations for services for anything up to 50,000. Anything over 50,000, and you need to look at tendering process. but you get further information on the OGP's website if you're looking for anything more specific. We've done our best to keep the application as simplistic as we possibly can. The form's available to download from the NCSE website. There's a link within the presentation, but it's all fairly straightforward and easy to follow. You're looking for company details, an assigned project manager, an agreed project time and costings. You have to complete a declaration which confirms that Enterprise Ireland, your letter of offer has been received, and that you're happy for us to have, I suppose, to have sight and oversight of that. And then section E is probably one of the most important, is your supporting documentation. So if we take a look at the supporting documentation, it is your letter of offer, your report based on the review that you've just gone through, an outline, a statement of the proposed works, and your quotations. Again, I can't emphasize enough the public procurement rules must be followed, so just keep these in mind as you move through the process. Everything is collated and submitted to ourselves. We have a dedicated email box to receive these applications. We have one ask, and that you include your company name in the filing of the application form, and that's just for ease of reference and to make sure nothing gets lost in the cyber post. Other than that, I'm happy to take questions. As I said, we've done our best to keep it as simple and straightforward as we possibly can. We're conscious of tight timelines, so we want people to be able to move freely and smoothly through the process.
That's great. Thanks very much, Alison. And I think you've probably answered the key question there that was coming through from our members, was around the timelines and that 8th of December deadline. And so look, that's clarified for us now, in that you're working to this EU project and the deadlines that are there, as well as the 2 million budget that you have. So that first deadline is still there for the 8th of December. And on that, you'll do a review of the number of applications that have been approved. If there is budget left over after that, you may look at opening up a second round in the new year, but you still have that deadline of June 2025 for all of the work to be completed, and the claim has to be in for that.
Absolutely, and I suppose it is a restriction. It's a restriction that we're very conscious of, but ultimately the budget is 2 million, and we want to see that 2 million invested here. So we want to make sure that we've made it an easy process for people to be able to submit their applications and get through the system.
Great, thanks. So we're going to go into a Q&A. We have about 10 minutes. The Q&A function is open, if you can use that as opposed to sending us messages in the chat, because we won't be able to monitor that as well. So put them into the Q&A function and we'll roll through them in order. One that came into us beforehand was around the eligibility and the qualifications. So you have listed there a number of certifications, CISM, CISA, CISP. There was a question around, one, are they requirements to avail of the grant, or are they a recommendation? And then secondly, there was a follow-up question around, I suppose, what are the equivalent certifications there? So there's others like ISO 27001 auditor, SOC 2, PCI. Will they also be eligible?
Okay, maybe if I kick that one off and then see if Alison wants to add anything at the end. So absolutely, having a significant cyber certification is needed, and that's different from a lot of other Enterprise Ireland grants. And I think that may be the perspective of the person asking that. And the reason we're asking for that is twofold. One is that it's expertise. It's not just business as usual. It's not just shoveling a grant into the business. It's having the expertise to make that smart money, and having the expertise to take the client on the cybersecurity journey is very important to us. I think there's a secondary benefit of us asking for those qualifications, that it's helping further enhance and further evolve the cybersecurity industry in Ireland. There are a couple of individuals that approached us, really experienced people, really, multiple 10, 15 years of experience in named companies, but hadn't yet gone to get their certifications. So I feel a little bit sorry for those guys, in that they're the ones tending to get caught out by this. But if it's giving people the nudge to get the full certification to become even more professional, that's the thinking behind it. In terms of answering a specific is whatever equivalent, That's something that we'll need to take offline, because with the 400 plus qualifications in the area, I can't get into doing that in real time. But definitely drop a line to cybersecurity review at enterprise-ireland.com, and we'll walk you through that. That's an EI view of it. NCSC are obviously a different organization and may take a different view and equivalence. Alison, I don't know if you want to add anything at this time, or you're happy enough with that?
I'm happy enough, Paul, with I suppose how you've responded. The only thing that I would add, so for example, in a scenario where training was a recommendation of the review, obviously those qualifications, you would need a slightly different qualification to teach and to develop and to train. So it's case by case basis. So if, as Paul says, if there's specific queries, do send them in to us and we can deal with them directly.
Thanks for that. Paul, we've a couple of questions for you kind of around the application process. So there was one that came in saying that the application form was only visible to EI clients. Is it possible to get access to that?
So that's a brilliant question. And the reason why I like it is the person asking it is almost stepping in the shoes of the end client that they're working with. It's a very easy answer. Anybody can go on and register themselves on the Enterprise Ireland website, which allows you then to walk through the actual live application form as your clients will see it as well. Where we check, and this is useful information to know for people as well, where we check for client status is where you actually hit the submit button, because we then associate it with a client on the system. So the quick answer is you're able, anybody on this call, even if you're not an EI client, to go on to take a look at those live forms. And the live forms, if you want to find the link, is if you go to the enterprise-ireland.com/cybersecurity review, big apply now buttons, click on that, and it will ask you to register yourself.
And just to clarify, you don't have to be an EI client to be able to sign up on the website to be able to view the forms.
You can view the forms, but we will filter you if you accidentally hit the submit button at that point. So you can definitely view the forms regardless of your client status.
Okay. And there was another question that came in around, is there an example of a best practice or EI compliant security report for the cyber review grant to be able to help providers with a standardized template or format?
Okay. Yeah. Yes, there is. And the way that you can view what we're suggesting as a template is, again, if you go to the enterprise-ireland.com/cybersecurity review, there's a tab on that called claims. There's two documents that clients will need to pass back to us to make the claim. One is the report that we're just talking about here, a suggested template. And then the other is a Excel file that has to be filled out by the client. It's mandatory legal details. It's very, very lightweight. It's literally 2 or 3 minutes to fill it out. But there is an example of the form under the claims. We are open to people evolving their own internal documents as long as they substantially line up with the form as well. You know, we're trying to follow good business practice. The consultants here will have their own templates, but that's a discussion we can get into. But if you take a look at the headings as a starting point, there's a couple of things in there we absolutely do need to see.
Okay. And another one for you that came in around the calculation of the risk score. Can you clarify how that's calculated? Is it based on the supplier criteria or is it standardized?
And again, I love the question because it shows people are thinking about this and maybe reading a little bit too much into it. So we asked all consultants to put a score in their opinion on the client. The reason why we asked that is that really drives the discussion that if an end client sees a 5 or 6 or 7, they're quite competitive. They want to be getting to 10. So it really opens up the discussion of, I'm a 5 now, what can I do to drive that? It is purely based on the consultant's opinion. There's no leveling, there's no scoring matrix, there is nothing cross-checking there. It's purely the consultant's opinion to drive that conversation. And maybe we take a look at our wording on the form to make that clearer again, that it's the consultant's opinion on what score they give.
Okay. A couple of questions coming in for you as well, Alison, on the NCSE grant. One of them was around the infrastructure one that I can see you're just responding to here. So if you want to clarify that.
Yeah, no, I suppose it might be a typo there in the presentation, but no, hardware definitely won't be covered. That's something that they've been very clear on. That is, I suppose, other solutions, but hardware and specifically won't be covered.
There was another question just around, I suppose, working to that tight deadline of the 8th of December. It was noted that, there was a question is, do you have to have the cyber review grant of 3K completed before applying for the 60K grant, which you do. You can't go
Absolutely.
on and do it without it. But there is a note there that that is a challenging timeline to meet based on, getting the application into Enterprise Ireland, getting that approved through EI, and then actually carrying out the work. So just to note, I suppose, that it's coming through from people that they will struggle to have the work completed on the cyber review grant by the 8th of December deadline to move on to the cyber improvement grant.
Yeah, no, we know that's quite challenging, but we're hopeful that the Paul's team in there will get the approval rates, keep them moving quickly.
Yeah, I'm nodding, and we're doing our best to keep things moving. So in general, what we're seeing from the ones that I've gone through end to end, 4 minutes for the application, a couple of days for approval. We're going to take steps to speed that up again. And then actually, in terms of delivery of the consulting services, once you get the date in the diary, that is quite quick. That seems to be between three days to a week to actually complete that. So it can move quite fast. Can we make it move faster? Absolutely. And we're keen to keep it's actually a lean conference that I'm at the moment on the regional. So picking up good ideas on things that we can do to improve the process further.
Okay, so that was one of the questions that came through around the application turnaround time. So 4-minute application process, very short. You're aiming for 1 to 2 days turnaround on the approval on the EI side, and then that goes back to the cyber provider to do the assessment, which you're seeing is taking maybe 2 to 3 days.
Exactly, and I'd underline at the moment that it's aiming for that turnaround time. We're not there yet, and we need to keep on working at it. It is the fastest grant turnaround that we have within Enterprise Ireland. We have the figures to back that up. But again, for the type of grant it is and the time pressures that everybody's under, we're constantly looking to do that even faster again.
Okay. Just looking through some of the questions here.
Oh, and can I answer questions? Somebody
Please do. If you see any,
sorry.
feel free to pick them out.
There was a clarification required in relation to who makes the application. The person in receipt of the funding or the company in receipt of the funding makes the application, not the assessor. Is that okay?
Absolutely. It's the same for the Enterprise Ireland grants as well. The end client, our relationship is with the end client, and they're the person that gets the claim and the money back from Enterprise Ireland.
Easy question for me here. Is the recording of the webinar available? As you said in the introduction, we'll be recording the presentations and sending that out with the slide decks afterwards. So that was an easy one for me. Does the remediation work need to be delivered by a consultant with a qualification like CISM or CISA, which we've clarified already? It does. That is a requirement. Are you seeing any others there, Paul or Alison, that
And just one there, just in terms of the numbers. Paul, forgive me for talking about you, but you had mentioned that over 200 had started.
Have started the application. We need to move them through the process, correct?
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
The secondary question then is, are we looking for more budget in 2025? We have 2 million to distribute for this program, and that's all we'll be in a position to distribute at this time.
So I suppose the question there is, if all 200 were approved and delivered under the cyber review grant, would it be possible for them all to go on and get funded in the cyber improvement grant? Obviously they wouldn't, because there's not 12 million euros there to deliver for all of the potential projects that are available. So I suppose that's why to note that there is a limited budget there for that.
And maybe if I could nuance it a little bit, that many of the 200 wouldn't be in a position to apply for the full amount anyway. They would be smaller companies that just wouldn't have the capacity to absorb that kind of grant. But you're right, Owen, there is an element of competition, and it is good in some ways in terms of keeping things moving through. But yeah, it's not like late show. Not everybody's going to be able to avail of the grant. So the sooner that we can get people through, the better.
And Paul, there was just a clarification around the cyber review grant. Does that 8th of December deadline apply to the cyber review grant?
No,
Just to
so
clarify that.
yeah, and I'll repeat the point. So thank you for the opportunity to do that. The Enterprise Ireland grant, the 3K grant, will be operating until at least the middle of next year. And we will keep on moving through that regardless of the decisions the NCSE need to make. And you can sort of see the funding. The NCSE funding is obviously more significant. They have tougher decisions. For us to keep the machinery in place, it's a lot easier. It certainly is one that's demanded by Enterprise Ireland clients, so we'll leave that in place.
And is there, Alison was talking about the public procurement guidelines for the larger projects. Is there similar public procurement guidelines for the 3K cyber review grant?
No, not on the 3K grant, and it's because, sorry, without getting into the entire legal mechanisms behind it, but the way that we got European permission to run the grant, and it being a smaller grant, enables us to say, end client, pick your consultant from hopefully the Cyber Ireland list or equivalent, and you can take it from there. So there's no need for the 3 quotes for the smaller EI grant. It makes it a lot more efficient.
Alison, there was a question coming in here on what is the reasoning behind the 25K minimum for the cyber improvement grant? So some companies may only need to implement a project that could be 10 or 15K and don't qualify for that.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and it's something that we've toyed with a couple of times. Because what we're trying to do is make a significant impact, and we were trying to put a value on that impact, and we felt, having consulted internally and externally, that if a significant investment was made, a significant impact would be achieved, and that's where we've set the minimum to. So it's in order to try to get a good impact and a good return for the investment on the grant funding.
And are you able to share any details of what you're seeing coming through? Have there been many applications for the larger grant that have come through from companies that have completed the first cyber review grant yet?
We have received a close of business on Friday of last week. We received 1 application and numerous queries. I suppose the challenge that we're having is making sure applications that are coming through are valid. So that's why we went, if you look at the criteria and the supporting documentation, that's something that needs to be paid close attention to. So procurement is a big thing. And because this is public funding, we need to make sure that we're adhering to public procurement guidelines.
Okay. So sorry, go ahead, Paul.
I was going to say, just based on experience from other grants we've run, I'd expect those numbers to change quite quickly, obviously, as the more companies come through.
So we have a very large funnel at the start, the 200 applications. They're making their way through Enterprise Ireland, the review, then to be delivered, and do the assessments to go on then. So I suppose that's a process that takes time. Coming back to the training and education, well, on the qualifications, and I know we have covered this possibly in the previous webinar, but just to clarify again, there was 3 qualifications or certifications there that were selected with the or equivalent. Was there any reason why those 3 were selected? Maybe Alison, the NCSE, that you're seeing that these are, the standard ones, and that other degrees or MSCs or certifications weren't selected. I think there was a question coming back from some of our members as well that the clients were only using these 3 qualifications to go out in their job specs and looking for providers, even though there are other equivalent certifications and qualifications like a master's in cybersecurity and maybe others that would be relevant as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't involved in that, and that's not trying to pass the book. I'm literally covering this element of the project for my colleague today, so I'm not sure of the exact conversation. And Paul, you might be able to fill in some of the gaps.
If I can speak to it, but obviously speaking to it from an Enterprise Ireland point of view, my impression was that Aoibheann would have consulted with colleagues on that and took their advice on, what is broadly standard. And then Aoibheann and I and several other colleagues had some discussions around equivalence. And it's important, obviously, from an Enterprise Ireland point of view, that we have some sort of standard, because either you have a qualification or you don't, and the equivalence process then is fully documented because it needs to be fair, it needs to be operated fairly, whether it's myself or a colleague making the call on that. So in general, without getting into the detail, if you've made a significant investment in your cyber education and qualifications, that's the kind of thing that we're exploring. I don't want to get into the details of is this master's or is that degree, but in general, we understand where people asking the questions are coming from on that. NCSC obviously have to make their own decisions on for their grant, but from the EI grant, that's roughly how it's working.
Okay, thanks for qualifying that. So there are other qualifications out there that are not listed that are suitable for the providers to look at.
I had a shock, and this shows me my learning curve as well. I think there's a slide that was provided by one of your Cyber Ireland members, which shows that there's roughly 400 plus significant cyber qualifications that can be done. So we can't get into listing every single one of them, and hence that's why we're doing the process what we're doing. We are trying to get people the answers as quickly as possible within that kind of line of thinking that I shared earlier.
Okay. So we're coming to the end of the questions that we've run through. There's been a huge number. We've 50 to 20 questions that we've already run through, grouping them together. There's one final one here. Are we expecting clients to go out to tender for the expert help in delivering the project, even though the expert was the one who delivered the assessment, or this fall outside the project costs? Are we looking at, one we are looking at has 3 elements, one of which the expert could deliver around policy scripting.
I might just answer that, Owen, if you don't mind. We're looking for, I suppose, open and transparent competition in relation to awarding contracts. That doesn't mean that the person who has done your assessment can't bid or offer for the works or elements of the work. So long as you have an open and transparent process, you are adhering to public procurement guidelines. Just keep in mind the thresholds. So anything over 50,000, if you're grouping it as a large one contract, then it'll bring it up over the thresholds. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that answers the question.
I think, Owen, and I know people will get very specific, and rightly so. I think we've both shared emails, obviously, in our case, cybersecurity review at enterprise-ireland.com. If people are feeling that we didn't get into the detail that they wanted, certainly they're welcome to email ourselves. And I know Alison shared the email for the NCSC as well. So we would both, I think, be keen to follow up if people have specific questions around that.
So we don't have any further questions to get through. Paul or Alison, do you have any closing comments or remarks that you'd like to make before we wrap up?
I love the level of engagement that we've got here, Owen. I really, really appreciate people asking the questions coming on this, but the work that they've done in engaging with clients to bring us to this point. So while sometimes it's difficult to be put under the level of questioning, I think it's really, really good, and I really appreciate the engagement from the industry on this.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, first and foremost, to thank yourself and Zara and Cyber Ireland for facilitating this. It's a great opportunity for us to present a programme of work, but also to work so collaboratively with you guys and with Enterprise Ireland, and hopefully with people at the other end of the webinar in the future. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
That's great. Look, thank you to both for coming on today. Paul, thanks very much for your engagement, the promotion of the Cyber Ireland members and those offerings of promotion through the newsletter, promotion at Cyber Ireland members events and webinars. Alison, particular thanks for you for stepping in at short notice today and giving a very good account of the Cyber Improvement Grant. Again, there are 2 email addresses there for people to contact to get further information if we didn't cover anything today. But we just really like to thank both the Enterprise Ireland and NCSC, Paul and Alison, for coming on and answering our members' questions today. And we're going to wrap it up there and leave people get back to their day. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.